Good morning, everyone. Oh. Good morning, everyone. Joy, can you confirm if you can hear and see us?
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Isabel doesn't have the.
Okay, and you can see the right screen?
Thought you
Yes,
I can see you as well.
He's only
You can go ahead.
now, though. Okay, cool. Is she ready to meet?
Okay, I can hear other speakers. Right, off we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another I2 expert session for iTOOsdays. It's great to have so many people on the call, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So today we're talking about beyond the canvas and looking into the valuation processes for art and other collectibles. So the question is value in the eye of the beholder, or is there more to it than that? So we're going to be talking to expert valuer Harriet Gilfillan from Gilfillan and Associates about art and collectible valuations and the process of determining independent professional valuations for unique and appreciating assets. But before I introduce Harriet, I just want to bring up a topical situation that I think has become quite a warning for our clients. And that is the recent art heist that happened in Pringle Bay in August. There's a beautiful sculpture park. I don't think you can see much from the background there, but it's at FOMO Fine Art Gallery and Sculpture Park. And there were 7 large-scale bronze sculptures that were stolen overnight, 6 of them Anton Smit and 1 Jaco de Beer. So there is a call out for anyone who has seen any of these works to please contact us or the gallery to let us know if there's any information. Which brought me to talking about the types of art theft that I2 Art Insure have identified. So we see 3 different kinds. We've got targeted art thefts, which is very much where you imagine there's an end buyer in mind and they're specifically looking for that particular work. There is an end buyer and the process is often quite slick and professional. Then we've got our opportunistic thefts, and that occurs if it's during the course of a robbery and the criminals discover an item that they think might be worth something. The trouble with the opportunistic is that they don't often have an end buyer. And fortunately for us, because these are unique collectible assets, it's quite difficult to get them back into the market as legitimate artworks. And that is where we come in with our art theft register, because opportunistic is often where we have the most success in recovery. Then the last, and I think the saddest of the thefts, is the theft of artworks that are made from recyclable materials, like bronze, like copper, where they're simply melted down into the value of the metal itself and become doorknobs and ashtrays. This, I think, is devastating because the value, the time, the cultural history of the work is simply lost to the nation. So in our attempt to try and assist to curb, we've got the I2 Art Insure Art Theft Register. This is available to all. There is no fee charged for accessing and there's no fee charged for adding the works. The clients do not have to be insured by Art Insure for them to be allowed to add the works onto the register. What's important about this register is that auctioneers and other dealers in the secondary market can make sure that they check against this register to make sure that they're not inadvertently selling stolen works. We also have additional covers that can protect clients from being financially impacted if they inadvertently buy stolen works from a reputable dealer, not somebody on the side of the road. If they have got the defective title cover, that would cover them for the financial loss if the work is confiscated and given it back to the original owner. You can find that on www.artinsure.co.za. So what I also wanted to talk about is for the valuations, and this is very important because it goes back to our art theft register. We very, 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 very dearly need clear images. So if the clients have nothing else, then clear images are the bare minimum. But what is first prize is to have a professional third-party valuation. So there's a number of benefits that you get from valuations because it'll give you your documented proof of ownership. You'll still need your proof of purchase invoice as well as supporting document. It also allows us to ensure the collection at an agreed value. As you can imagine, with normal contents cover, you would be insuring it at a replacement value. And if anything happened, you would head off to, your local dealer and get 3 replacement quotes, and then it's settled on replacement value. It can't be done with these very, very, irreplaceable items. You can't get a replacement quote afterwards. So it's very important to determine the value, get the clear images, prior to anything happening, because then the claim is clean, clear, and quick. So I'll give you an example here of if the client has a current valuation and we have an artwork that is stolen. If it's insured at an agreed value of 200,000, then we'll place it on the art theft register. The client will be paid the 200,000, and we will commence with our attempt to recover the artwork. If we do recover the artwork, we first offer it back to the insured at the price that we've paid it out, plus interest, not necessarily what the market or the value is at that present where it was recovered. Same if we've got a current valuation and the artwork has been accidentally damaged, the client makes the decision if they want to declare it a total loss or not. If they don't want to keep it, we will take it as salvage and we will pay out the agreed value. If the client wants to keep the work, then we'll arrange for it to be professionally restored because we have a whole panel of experts. The restored work will then go back to the client and it will then be revalued by a professional third-party valuer. And that's to determine if there has been any depreciation following the loss. So the client will then get their restored work along with the cash payment of the difference between what it was insured for before as well as what it's valued in now following the depreciation. Without a current valuation and we don't have images, the event of a theft, we would probably still put it on the art theft register, but it doesn't really help without an image for people to reference and to trigger a response of recognition. The client is also very likely to be underinsured, and although the claim would still be honoured, it is difficult to determine that valuation post-loss. So the claims process becomes very tricky and lengthy. Again, even without the valuation, the client still does have the option to choose if they want to declare the work a total loss or not. We'll still arrange for the professional restoration of the damaged work, but the art insure appreciation clause will not apply. So in that case, if the valuation is less than 2 years old, we have an appreciation clause that would apply to say, we will pay up to 20% over the agreed value if it is found that it has been appreciated during the period since the valuation, and the client would be settled at the higher value. So without further ado, to introduce and to discuss the importance of valuation, I'd like to introduce Harriet Gilfillan from Gilfillan and Associates. Harriet, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you come with a lot of experience, and I think what I'd like to start with is, what does it take to become a valuer? Give us some of your history, or how did you get to this point?
Good morning, everybody. I'm so delighted to be here. The main thing about a valuer is that you have the experience of having handled over the years, like I have, artworks. The experience and knowledge of the art and antique market is gained from handling and assessing art and artifacts. And this knowledge of objects is further nuanced by the need to follow up and keep up with art trends and the collectors market, both nationally and internationally. I have over 40 years experience in both the international and local art markets. I completed when I was at school in England for a short while, and I came back and joined Westgate Holding Auctioneers and ran their antiques auctions for them. I then went across to do the Christie's finance course in the early 1980s. And from there, I came back to South Africa and was asked to run the Christie's office for them locally, which I did for 15 years. And then when Christie's pulled out of South Africa and also out of 26 other countries when they were sold, I then joined up with one of my colleagues who was with me, and we started doing insurance valuations. Now, cannot learn this in universities. You have to learn this by experience and handling and seeing things. So that is how you get your knowledge. And it's not a course that you can take. And as I've always said, I'm very, very happy to mentor people if they want to be mentored.
Which I think is important because we
Yeah.
do need to keep the skills within our country, particularly from a valuation and expertise point of view. Yes.
Yes. So basically, Gilfillan and Associates provides all different types of valuations. We can do it for institutions, government institutions and museums, and we comply with the GRAP 103 requirements in accordance with sections 91 1B of the Public Finance Management Act, number 1 of 1999, as amended. I'm so sorry, I'm reading this out because it's quite long.
Yes, when you start talking about that.
But then also I do valuations for private people, corporate valuations, and
all sorts of any particular types of assets that you
well, the thing about it is that you have got to, and where I'm so lucky having worked with Christie's, is that I do valuations of all artifacts,
other collectibles.
all collectibles, yes. And the knowledge, as I said, is acquired through years of experience. And as I've been working with Christie's, I have got an enormous amount of colleagues abroad who specialize in certain areas.
Niche areas.
Yes, in certain niche areas, exactly. And so if there is something that is not within my area of expertise, such as very, very fine paintings, jewelry, silver, Japanese, Chinese. I have a network which I can speak to and get their help and assistance from. So therefore, I can do valuations of everything within the art and
Yes.
work.
And I think that's an important point to remember, because a lot of us are referencing programs like the Antiques Roadshow. So I think what would be really helpful is, Harriet, if you could please take us through the valuation process and how values for collectibles are determined. Where do you start? And we can maybe use, you can see in front of us, we've got an example of a Norman Catherine sculpture. And I think one thing, Harriet, what has stressed to me is that for both of our companies, is confidentiality is absolutely vital and, and key. So this work belongs to me, and I have given permission for us to talk about the valuation of the artwork, or the process on how Harriet would begin to have a look at where do you start?
Well, it's very important that I actually do see the item. We've got to determine whether it's damaged or what its condition is, which is of vital importance for valuations. And what I would do is that I'd have a look at this piece. I would take photographs of it. I would make sure it's been signed, and if it's numbered, I'd take a note of that as well. I then actually take a size of the work, because that is also important, because I'm jolly sure this one most probably is in a much larger
Scale.
as well.
Yes.
And when you take a photograph, you can't tell the size of the item. So that's why it's very important to it's critical to get a size.
And that is actually also really, really important for the art theft register. If we have the more information that we have, that will allow us to track the correct work, the better.
Yes. And then I will then go and I will research in the various sites that I subscribe to online. And if there is a dealer who deals in the artist, which there is, I will also contact them. And I will say to them, so I don't only, if I'm going through my normal process, I go into all the sites that I've got, but then I will also go through to the dealer and I will say, what is this worth? If you were to sell this in your gallery today, what would you charge for it? And that really is the replacement value, is what an insurance value is. So I would then get you the final value on this particular item. You would then get a document from me with an image of it, the description, and the value.
Which is perfect, because that helps. Yes, as I said, we've had examples of thefts where we get a picture of a family gathering, get together, and you've got a sculpture and artwork in the background, and you're trying to zoom in, and you get this horribly pixelated image that, we can put on the art theft register, but obviously your chances of any kind of recovery are far higher when you've got clear images, the complete details, the dimensions, the material. All of it is valid, and we don't put any personal information on the art theft register. It would just be the location and the description.
Yeah, I think that's, as you said, the most important thing is confidentiality in every aspect. So if I'm asked by a client to do a valuation, I will send the valuation to the client. If the insurer has asked me to do the valuation, I will send it to them. But I will only do that if I've been given permission from the client, because that is really is paramount.
And we've got, I'm sure you know as well, you've had experience as well as we have, is that we do have a lot of clients who are very, very private about their collections. Yeah. They don't want to share the information. They do not want anyone to know what is at their premises. And we have in some instances accommodated this by allowing our clients to give us, well, they still need the documentation, but they can give it to us in a password protected document, because we may not necessarily need it for now. But if there is a loss, then we need to get the password to access that document, because then we need to know all the information.
Yeah. So basically, the insurance valuation is done in two phases. The first phase is seeing the physical item. The second phase is working in the background, finding out the value of the item.
So quite a lot of research. So it's not very realistic in my mind, because I think you and I probably know that the process is a little bit more involved. For example, on these shows, these road shows, where the person walks up and has a value in 3 seconds. How realistic would that be?
Well, you know, first of all, the person who's looking at whatever the item is a specialist in that area. Secondly, they would have done some research on that piece before they could actually come up with an absolute price on it. And so, you know, I think the thing is that you cannot walk into a house and say, this is worth this is worth that. When you're talking about art, yes, you can for a chair and a sofa and whatever, but you can't for a work of art. And I thought it's quite important to actually also here say that Gilford and Associates are currently on the panel of the I2 Art and Show valuation panel. And also that I personally am registered with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So I have got that as another thing behind me.
So it sounds like it's a slightly different process that would be followed for private collections versus, as you referenced earlier, with the GRAP, with the museums and government institution collections.
Yes. The GRAP is subject to the Auditor General's rules and regulations, yes. But I find museums very exciting to do. I love doing them as well. And it's very important and vitally important that museums have, as do private people and companies, have a list of what they've got. And if possible, have an image of it as well. Yeah. And so when I do museum valuations, I do actually drop into their database an image of the item as well. And it's very, very important actually, because sometimes the people who take on after the museum people who have been looking after the collection after all these years, the new people who take on don't actually know precisely what everything is. And so if you've got an image there as well, it's just incredibly helpful. And if anything, is stolen from a museum, you've also got an image. So that's how I like to do things for the museums.
I think also there's a definite educational part here, because if we're talking company collections, I think we can quite comfortably say that private collectors are very aware of the value of the items that they've got. It's not always the case when it comes to corporate collections, and I'm not talking about companies that trade in art, but for example, Hollywood's collection or a lawyer's office collection, unless there's an individual in that firm I found who's driving it and who understands and recognizes the value, it quite often gets put under assets and then it depreciates over time. And if there is a loss, then they're going to be very badly underinsured.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why it's very important that everybody is actually taught about what they've got around them.
Yes. Right. And we're talking about appreciating assets, but it's not necessarily appreciating assets. So what factors could contribute to the depreciation of collectibles? And I think we're seeing quite a lot of it in the market at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I have my own ideas about this, and this is definitely not everybody's idea. But what's happened is the older generation are usually not buying art because they've got what they want. They've got it over the years and they've loved collecting. And a lot of older generation are moving into smaller houses. So what you're finding is the art from the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, is not really the sort of art that the new young collectors are wanting for their homes. They are more interested, as I have found and through experience, in contemporary art. Their homes are very contemporary, and the art, contemporary art fits into their homes. Now, I'm not saying that this is only a South African thing. This is worldwide, and it's fascinating because all the auction houses abroad and locally here are now bringing in handbags and scarves and all sorts of fashion items into their auctions. And this is, I was told by people abroad, to bring the young into the auction houses so that they can, it's something to attract them into that. And boy, oh boy, is it doing that. And all of the auction houses now are doing that to bring in the young.
Which is fantastic, because I know one of our goals and missions is also to try and make art more accessible and not so, for want of a better word, snobby.
And you'll find also that most of the galleries are doing contemporary art as well. And it's very, very exciting art, the contemporary art, and in particular the art from Africa, all over Africa, southern up to the northern Africa.
So all is not lost from an art market. It's just a change or a shift in people's preferences and buyer behavior.
Exactly. And the works coming out of Africa are very exciting, and they are becoming international. And there's an auction held in Paris regularly. There's the 154, which is Africa in 54 states, which is an exhibition held in London. All the auction houses have African art
Dedicated
sales, or portion of their sales dedicated to African art. And there is a very, very fabulous gallery in the south of France, which is run by a South African lady, and she has contemporary, and it's called, I wish I could it's just gone.
I'll come back to you.
But that's an exciting thing. And I think that we're finding that that's an area that I would start if I was a young person collecting in, because it is getting such international renown.
And I think it's almost a delayed recognition, because the going through COVID was terrible in very many ways. But one way that I think it benefited the whole art market is to open it up and make it all accessible, online. So you've now opened it to all your international buyers, to the younger buyers who are maybe nervous to walk around, an auction house or a gallery. But online, I never thought I'd see the day when people were buying very valuable works online.
Yes.
But I suppose a lot of that goes back to who's selling it, and the trust involved in the companies that are dealing with the works. You have to have trust in.
Well, that's it. And, when you're talking about art, it's very, very important that there is that you have good provenance, that you bought it from, if you bought it from a gallery or an auction house, that it's a very reputable place, and that you buy the best that you can at the time. So it's a very exciting world.
I definitely am completely biased, but I agree. On the other side of the coin, so we have factors that do depreciate, and that would be, I suppose, in summary, just a change in market. But what factors would contribute to the works appreciating? You mentioned provenance would have an impact.
Yes, well, definitely provenance and also where it was purchased. That definitely, but that is part of your provenance, actually. So you can say, I bought this from a gallery in Hong Kong, and it's a lovely Chinese blue and white plate, and it's a reputable gallery. You can be assured that that will be what they say it is. And I can go out. I then would check with various colleagues abroad and get the valuation, because obviously it's a very specialist area. If you're talking in terms of, let's say, just Chinese porcelain or Japanese or whatever.
Very specialized.
Yes.
And we still have South African artists, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that we've still got South African artists that are doing really well, and that are appreciating. I can think of a couple of examples like Kentridge, who is absolutely everywhere, and his works are appreciating at a rate of knots, and as well as Nelson Makamo, I can think of.
Yeah. Yep, they're a massive South African artists. I mean, of course, Marlene Dumas, who was born in the Cape, now lives in Amsterdam, but she calls herself South African, which is fabulous for all of us. She, some years ago, fetched the highest price for a female artist at auction. I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, it was something like £300,000. And it was extraordinary. And she was top of the pops, and she still is top of the pops. She is still considered one of the world's greatest artists, as is. And William Kentridge has done remarkably well. But there again, you see, he's had a fantastic, now he's on his, he doesn't need that, but his beginnings with Linda Goodman was what got him into the sort of exposure.
Which is nice to see for living artists.
Sure. And now he's just established himself completely, and he is bought all over the world. I mean, if you watch the auctions, all over the world. And that is just something that we can be so proud of. And
it is. We're becoming international, yes, and not just limited to South African sales.
Yes, yeah. And, if you think about it, if there is a Pioneer coming up for sale in London or an Irma Stern, usually it's a South African who buys it. Sometimes it's a South African in Australia, one in England, or one in South Africa. But it's usually, so whilst they have got an international, and of course I'm being very, very specific, but William Kentridge is bought by everybody. Whereas those artists usually are bought by South Africans or people with links to South Africa.
Which again goes back to art is a very emotional connection as well as a financial investment.
And then when you think about the most expensive Irma Stern ever sold, it was of an Arab man, and it was bought by the museum in Qatar, I think it was, one of the Middle Eastern museums. And it was bought because they actually, what's it, the
subject? No?
Sorry?
I was going to say the subject of the painting?
The subject of the painting, and it was also that island of Mozambique, what's it called? Irma Stern's friends are them.
The Zanzibar frames.
Zanzibar. Yes, the island of Zanzibar was you see, this is old age. No such thing. No. But the island of Zanzibar was part of, I think it's Kuwait. I'm not 100% sure which country it was. And they bought it because it was an Arab man in a Zanzibar frame in Zanzibar. And so that was an unusual situation. But What a fantastic honour
It's
to be
brilliant.
having such an important picture.
And there are some South African, I mean, even recently we had, well, not that recently, but Strauss had a sale where there was a Trechikov that sold for 31 million rand.
But what a fabulous picture. I mean, that picture was just an extraordinary, iconic Trechikov. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
And it's funny because a few years ago he was known as the king of kitsch. So this is again, it brings us back to the importance of valuations, because sometimes it might depreciate because of market conditions, but could very well swing right back up, when the demand increases.
Exactly. But what actually happens is then people will see that one and then automatically assume that theirs is worth the same. And that's where provenance and condition
History.
and everything comes in. Yes.
It's also the story that goes with it, right? I mean, if it's been owned by a well-known individual, I think that also has an impact on it, because you might have, let's say, editions, but only this edition has been owned by, oh gosh, let's just say royalty. Then is it right to assume that that particular edition would be valued at a higher value than the rest?
It just depends. It just depends. The subject is also very, very important. That was a very beautiful woman in that Trechikov. Subject is very important. Size is important. Medium is important. Because a watercolor does not fetch as much as an oil.
They don't last as long.
Well, if you keep them out of the sun, yes, they do. There's some fabulous watercolors around, but in the hierarchy, watercolors are not as expensive usually by the same artist as an oil by that artist. And so there's lots and lots of things which come into the valuation process.
Which is why we need somebody with such experience to help us with that. I'm going to ask a random question now. What is the strangest item, without breaking any confidentiality, but the strangest type of item or collection that you've been asked to value?
Let me just think. I've recently just valued an amazing collection. I don't really want to.
All right, I'll share one of mine then. And it's not to do the valuation. Obviously, we would have received the valuation. And maybe not strange, because if you think about natural museums, it's a possibility. But for an individual who had an entomology collection, with hundreds and hundreds of mounted bugs.
Yes. Yeah.
And that landed up being quite a fair sum insured.
I bet you. Because that's because some of them might not be actually on this earth anymore. Yeah, absolutely. And entomology, butterflies, all those things, those are all highly collectible.
And I think people that do collect, as a reminder as well, if they're collecting artworks and other collectibles, it's quite possible that they're collecting classic cars. So just a shout out to the classic car team as well.
But you think of stamps. This is a sad thing actually, because the stamp collections some of them are remarkable, and the postal history that goes with them is incredible. And I was told by stamp collectors that the young aren't, you will have the odd one, but the young just are not interested in collecting stamps. So it's becoming, that's another sort of aspect of the arts, is that those sort of things are not being collected as they were by the older generation.
But I am seeing new and different things that people are collecting, which I wouldn't have anticipated maybe 10 years ago. Sneaker collections.
Yes. That's it.
Designer handbags, as you mentioned before, a lot of the fashion.
Yeah.
Particularly in the the younger generations, the older.
Yes.
Fashion and collecting luxury goods has become very popular.
Yeah.
And what are the other ones that I've seen? And the gaming cards.
That's
a whole nother world. Yes.
Completely a whole nother world. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the passion is to collect. I suppose that what we need to determine is what is your passion and what do you want to collect? Because I think humans have in their nature the desire to collect.
Sure.
And to surround themselves with beauty.
Sure. So it's a fascinating world, and I learn every day, and there's not a day that goes past where I don't learn something. I love my job.
Which is fantastic. If
Yeah.
we all say that. Actually, I can.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do one last question before I open up to questions from the audience. If you had to leave our broker audience with one message to remember, what would it be?
It would be that it's very important to have an insurance valuation of your special art for the very reasons that we've been talking about. I think that it is vitally important. Very often as well, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but what happens is that your grandfather has a collection, which then goes down to father and then comes down to the child, but the child doesn't know what the grandfather had. So the insurance valuation also enlightens the people who have not had an interest in the collection of what the collection is. So you've got an image, description, and also a value.
That must be exciting for you and the client when you realize that there's, an unknown treasure that they've got that they've inherited and they had no idea what the value is, and then realize, oh my goodness, we've got an absolute gem here.
Sure. And that often happens.
Okay, so there's the note to all of to all of our brokers that have got clients with collections is to make sure that they have had them valued and insure them with niche insurers who actually, who know the process and what to do with damaged works and stolen works, because they can't be replaced. You cannot just get another one.
Yeah.
Even the edition numbers are unique.
Sure. If you've got a pair of diamond earrings which have been stolen or lost or whatever, you can replace them. But for artwork, it's a different thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to open up and see if there are any questions that we have for either myself or Harriet. Joy, would you let me know if there's anything in the comments?
Yes, we have three technically. From Ingrid, it says, how would you determine appreciation on items? Do you just add a percentage, or are there other factors to consider?
Sorry, I just want to make sure that I heard clearly. We're checking to see if we would just appreciate it by a percentage.
Yes. So how would you determine appreciation on items? Do you just add a percentage, or are there other factors to consider? That's the question.
That's actually something we didn't discuss, Harriet, was a revaluation of, if you have done a valuation or there has been a valuation done previously, and you're doing a revaluation to determine if there has been any appreciation since the last one, what are the factors there that we would be looking at?
Okay, so if Christie's always suggested that you have a valuation done every 5 years. So you don't have to have it done very much more often than that. The thing about it is that if I do a revaluation, I like to go back to the place where I've done the valuation, because I want to make sure that everything is still there. Very often what happens is people have sold things, so they say to me, "You've sold this," or "I've added to my collection, so this has been added." So that's why it's a great advantage to go back and have a look, so I can double check everything. As we said, some things have gone down in value, such as the sort of and so But many things, more than most, have gone up in value. So it's very, very important to actually do a revaluation, as I say, every 5 years, if possible. And no, I wouldn't suggest that you had a
flat. The
flat.
difficulty is that different artists are going to appreciate at different rates because of different set of circumstances.
Sure.
I do think that, for example, on the more African contemporary works, because they are so new and moving, might need valuations more often than 5 years. I know we recommend on the contemporary stuff normally every 2 years because of the changes that can happen quite quickly in the market.
Yeah.
I think some of your older masters, your antique furniture.
Now, you see, there again, furniture has gone down in value, and that's because, as you know, and this is worldwide. This is worldwide. It's not only in South Africa. It's because the young don't like antique furniture, and the young are the new buyers. And so, you know, that sort of thing. If you add a percentage on, you might be doing your client a disservice.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I haven't seen any.
Yes, we have more questions actually.
Okay, go for it.
How often should clients update valuation for art or collectibles to ensure they're adequately insured?
I think we did briefly touch on that, but let me just refresh everyone on the appreciation clause. So if we have clients that have got valuations that are 2 years or younger, then the appreciation clause would come into effect where we would pay up to 20% more on the item. With the valuations outside of that, the item would still be insured at agreed value, but we won't be looking to top it up because of sudden appreciation, I suppose is the right way to call it.
Right. Thank you. We have another one. What is the starting rate for evaluation?
Sorry, say again, what is the?
What is the starting rate for
Oh,
evaluation?
starting rate and costings involved.
Oh, well, my costings are very, very simple. I charge 150 rands per item valued, and then I charge a call-out fee. If I'm going to go down to Cape Town or any of the other places out of the Gauteng area, then of course there's you know, flights and hotels and things like that are added to it. But we do not charge a percentage of the value. We charge a flat fee of 150 rands plus VAT, of course. You have to put the VAT onto it. And the call-out fee in the Gauteng area is 500 rands. And then, of course, if it's out of the Gauteng area, then it's all the costs of travel and subsistence, and that's it.
And if we're looking at much larger collections, would that be a specific, you would offer a quotation based on the...
If it's a museum, yes, then I'd give them a quotation on the number of, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think it's an important point that Harriet has mentioned, and it's something that we made sure on the valuer panel that we've got, is to advise your clients to be careful of valuers who are basing their fee on a percentage of the work, because that's going to skew your results. You could have somebody who wants a higher fee and they could then overvalue the work because the fee would then be higher. So the flat fee for an item is
Yeah.
a lot.
That's how they do it
Safer.
in London, at the main auction houses and all the main people, they have a flat fee so that you cannot be told that you're skewing things. So if something is worth 3 million rands or it's worth 20,000 rands, you just pay 150 rands. For each.
Clean and clear.
Clean, clean and clear.
Brilliant. Any others, Joy?
Yes, there's more. I think it's the second last one. So it's two questions here. What if an artist disagrees with the valuation of their work and feels that it is undervalued? Is there a process to test this in market terms?
Interesting one. So what if the artist disagrees with the value on the valuation that has been provided? Is there a process to...
Well,
discuss, or has that ever happened?
what happens is that I will usually go to the gallery who represents that artist, and they will help me with the value. If not, and I have to go to the artist himself, like one of the major sculptures or something, I'll go to his studio and I will ask them, and I will get a value from them. So in fact, it's based on so many different factors.
And it's a different process than if the artist is still living versus.
Yeah. And if there is a gallery, I will contact the gallery and I will get pricing from them, or I'll ask them for a list of what they've got that is in their galleries at the moment by that artist, and then use the size and the sort of subject and use that. But yeah, it's a process. So it's not a situation where you go into somebody's house, have a look at a painting, and then they expect you to give them a price then and there or the next day, because the process is quite sort of time consuming.
And that's to make sure that it's as accurate as it could possibly be.
Exactly.
So I think it's also important to just highlight that when we're talking agreed value, we know that these items are going up or down or, staying consistent. What we're doing on the insurance policy is that we're agreeing this value at a snapshot in time. We're saying at this pinpoint shot in time, this is what we believe the market value is. The client agrees, the insurer agrees, the valuer agrees, and that's where the agreed value comes from. So it could change.
Yeah. Now,
months.
If by any chance the artist doesn't agree, I am very, very open to discussing it with the artist. And if the artist says, if I had to paint this again, this is what I would charge, then of course I will raise the valuation up to that amount. So, I'm always open to, and that's where I learn every day. I'm learning every single day. So I am very open to discussion, to be very honest, with artists. If I always ask people when I hand out the valuation to them, I always say, have you got any queries? If you do, get back to me. So that is, I'm open to that.
Important part of the process.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Jo, you said there was one more.
One more.
Yes, actually, there's more, but I think we can provide.
That's a good thing. Yes.
Because of time, I think we can provide Harriet contact details and where to get hold of her. But
Okay,
yes,
that we can
you
share
do-
out
Yeah.
to the attendees, definitely.
Yeah, we can do just one last one. It says, can electronic arts be insured? NFT blockchain pictures. This is also very popular, and the item sale for crazy prices, especially with younger generations. So, can electronic arts be insured?
I suppose that's a question for me then. And it was actually something that was debated pretty much globally for a long time, particularly during COVID when there was that NFT bubble. I think when everyone was stuck in their homes, there was a large body of people that were still collecting, but maybe weren't spending their money on travel or any of the other things that they would normally have spent it on. I do think that bubble has burst. They're not fetching quite the same prices as they were, those crazy prices a couple of years ago. But the challenge that we've got is that on the insurance policy, we insure physical loss and damage, or physical loss or damage. And if the item is not physical, has there actually been a loss? And it's quite a difficult debate, because if it can be reproduced, yes, it'll be a copy through a formula. Does that mean it's replaceable or not replaceable? And the debate continued for many, many months to get to a point where I don't think anyone is absolutely 100% sure how to insure them, because it could potentially be a cyber risk, but that would involve some sort of hacking, which we know on blockchain is very difficult. Or it could be the theft of the cold storage wallet. So in answer to your question, I haven't found out the answer to that question yet, I'm afraid. I'm still looking into it. I think it's very interesting. What I do think is really valuable from the smart contract and blockchain idea is the support of provenance. So if we've got artists that have got physical works that are linked to a smart contract or an NFT, that helps with the provenance, because then at least if it gets sold, then you've got a way to track with immutable, information who has owned it previously. There's also the opportunity from a more sort of commission point of view that the artist gets back a portion of that sale in perpetuity. So I think that's quite an exciting opportunity for the art world that would help all of us from a provenance point of view, from a fakes and forgeries. But the actual artwork itself is still a debate. We do have time for one more. We still got another 3 minutes. Joy?
Okay. Just sorry about that. I was just looking at the question. So it says, I just wanted to ask what happens if an art's provenance is incomplete or disputed. Also, how does cultural significance influence the financial value of art?
So that's two separate ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one, Harriet, what happens if the artwork's provenance is incomplete or disputed?
I've never had that before. So, I mean, if you've bought from the Everard Reed Gallery, you've bought from the Everard Reed Gallery. If it is, you might be talking in terms of
Inherited? Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it can be inherited. But there might be two beneficiaries who say it's theirs. So, you see, I think that is something which comes into play when you go to sell it at auction. And so then that's the auction house's problem. But for me, if I've been asked to do a valuation, I assume that the place that I go to do the valuation belongs to
the individual. The other part of that question was, how does cultural significance influence the financial value of art?
Well, I think it's going to come into it much more now. When you do valuations of African art, tribal art, that's very important. It's a very, very important aspect of the valuation. When I do a valuation of art from Africa, I'm not talking about paintings, I'm talking about artifacts from Africa. I always get in touch with a colleague of mine who's a specialist in African art.
Oh, in the cultural.
In England. And oh my goodness, I've learned so much. And I learned so much. But they specialize in such a small area of the arts, and which is just
okay, so they've got focus
from Africa. So they are focused on that. So they can also help. And they will say, if there is an importance because of its culture, whatever. But most of the cultural artifacts and things are in museums.
Okay.
Most of them.
Thank you, Harriet. I have definitely learned a lot, especially over today. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I think, Joy, is there a sign out link for everybody to sign out and get their CPD points?
Yes, there's a link and the QR code that is showed.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Harriet, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, it's a great pleasure being here. And if anybody has got questions, then
we'll share the contact details.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, thank you very much.